All right, so as the title of the video suggests, we are going over Azzure Oud here from French Avenue. So I went ahead and picked this fragrance up at the request of several people who hit me up on both here on YouTube as well as on other social media platforms. And actually, what I did before I actually picked up Azzure Oud was I went ahead and actually purchased a sample here of Oud Maracuja. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to actually pick this up first just to kind of get my nose on the scent profile and smell it, from the original scent and see if this was a fragrance that, I could appreciate or if this was going to be a fragrance that I hated. I would say if this would have been a fragrance that I just didn't really, I couldn't really get with at all, I probably would not have, purchased this fragrance, for a review. But I did actually enjoy the way that this smelled, for a really sort of oud forward type of fragrance. I do think that this does smell really, really good. It's probably the most sort of wearable and mass appealing sort of oud fragrance that I've sort of smelled in a while. I do kind of get the comparison that a lot of people, make with this and something like Ombre Nomad. But to me, this doesn't really smell anything like Ombre Nomad. Ombre Nomad is definitely, it's a lot more, kind of animalic in my opinion. A lot more sort of kind of barnyardy to me anyway. And it's a lot more kind of leathery. I would say all of the things, of a fragrance that I don't necessarily enjoy that much. All right. So that's why I don't really do too many Ombre Nomad, inspired fragrances on this channel. It's because I'm just not really a fan of that scent profile just in general. But, again, Oud Maracuja, to me, this does smell pretty good. All right. So in comes Azzure Oud from French Avenue. So this is going to be the presentation. It's the same presentation that you get with something like Liquid Brune from the same line here. So you get the like the little blue diamond here on the front of the box. That's also going to be on the front of the bottle as well as the top of the cap of the bottle. And then the name of the fragrance, Azzure Oud, and then French Avenue down here. You get French Avenue written on the top. And you get Azzure Oud kind of written here, like on this little silver strip. On the side, you have Azzure Oud and then the actual notes of the fragrance. Nothing on this side. On the back, you have French Avenue, the ingredients, the authenticity sticker, and then on the bottom, you have the barcode and like the manufacture date. This bottle was manufactured in August of this year, so it hasn't been that long. And on the inside here, you've got Azzure Oud French Avenue written there. And then you have, obviously, the bottle sitting in there like that. All right. So as you can see, it's the same bottle that you get with Liquid Brune, just a different color scheme. You've got the blue diamond here, French Avenue, another little fake blue diamond on the top of the cap. French Avenue written down here. And then you have the French Avenue sticker on the bottom. All right. And then as far as the sprayer goes, the sprayer is pretty average. It's like a really kind of like short puff of, fragrance that comes out, but it does shoot out a decent amount of fragrance. So that is the presentation with this fragrance. Now, the thing that we're all here for, I would say, is going to be the differences in smell. So there are going to be like some slight differences in the smell between these two fragrances. Now, this is a Eau de Parfum concentration. The Maison Criveli Oud Maracuja is a Extrait de Parfum. So just off the bat, there are going to be some slight kind of differences in terms of, how the two fragrances smell. But what I can say is the Azzure Oud, I think it does a very good job of, kind of replicating the smell in this fragrance. All right. Now, just right off the bat here, what I can definitely say is the passion fruit in the Oud Maracuja, the passion fruit and the other sort of, fruits that you get in this fragrance, it is going to be a little bit higher quality and more natural smelling in the original Oud Maracuja. All right. So that's just, that's the way that it is. And I mean, that's to be expected with a price difference, that you get with the two fragrances. I picked this fragrance, Azzure Aoud, up on FragranceBuy.ca for, I believe, like around $45 to $50, something like that. Whereas the Oud Maracuja for, I believe it's like a 50 ml or 55 ml, something like that. That is going to cost you $340. And I don't believe that this fragrance actually comes in 100 ml. I haven't seen that online anywhere. I know you can get, the Hibiscus Mahajad in 100 ml. And I think that one costs like over 500, but I have not seen anyone list Oud Maracuja in 100 ml. So if you all know that is actually a thing, 100 ml of Oud Maracuja, then definitely let me know in the comments. I didn't find one, but like I said, a 50 ml of this costs $340. So the price difference on the two fragrances is huge. It's absolutely huge. But I don't necessarily think that the difference in quality or, the difference in terms of, how these smell to each other is really that far in difference. All right. So if you're not familiar with like the note breakdown of Oud Maracuja, you're going to get in the top notes passion fruit, fruity notes, Turkish rose, and saffron. In the mid, you're going to get oud, Indonesian patchouli leaf, and benzoin. And then in the base notes, you're going to get leather, akigala wood, amber, labdanum, and vanilla. Now, the notes for Azzure Aoud are going to be a little bit different. Not really that much different, but slightly different. So in the top notes, you're going to get passion fruit, saffron, and rose in Azzure Aoud. In the mid, you're going to get oud, patchouli, and benzoin. And then in the base, you get leather, cistus, vanilla, and amber. So not too much of a difference, but there are some slight differences. Now, to me, Oud Maracuja comes off a little bit more fruitier than what the Azzure Aoud does in the immediate opening. So a little bit fruitier. The passion fruit and the fruity notes are definitely going to be a little bit more prominent, in my opinion, than what you get with the Azzure Aoud. However, despite the Oud Maracuja being a little bit more, fruitier, to me, the Azzure Aoud, it comes off as being just overall slightly more sort of sweeter than what Oud Maracuja is. So not necessarily sweeter in terms of being fruitier, but just, I guess maybe like the materials that are used in this fragrance, just overall, they kind of give the fragrance a slightly more sort of sweeter feel to it. It's not noticeable at all in the air, from what I can tell. It's more sort of noticeable like when you smell the two up close side by side, which most people, when they're smelling this on you, they're not going to be able to tell that difference. Now, like I said before, the passion fruit and the fruits, in general, from, what I can tell, as well as the rose also, they do just smell, higher quality, better blended in the Oud Maracuja. But I mean, to be honest, the difference between the two is, I'm going to say it's probably like a 5% difference. Like, it's really not that close, or, it's really not that far apart at all, in my opinion. So the two, just from the opening spray are really, really close. And then really once you start getting into like the mid and the dry down, like, you know, the where the patchouli, the leather, the woody aspects of the fragrance start to come out, to me, the two fragrances, they pretty much smell like, you know, identical to each other for the most part. I think the most difference that you'll smell is in that, you know, sort of opening, let's say 15 to 20 minutes or so, you know, with the quality of the fruits. But I think once the fruits sort of, you know, wear off in this fragrance, or, you know, kind of die down anyway, that's when Azzure Oud definitely, you know, becomes a lot closer to the Oud Maracuja. And I mean, again, the price difference is massive with these. So this is a 100 ml bottle, all right, which, like I said, I picked this one up for like around that $45 to $50 range. You know, if you were to get 100 mLs of, you know, the Oud Maracuja, especially if they actually don't make that fragrance in 100 ml, you would be looking at easily almost $700, you know, to get 100 ml of that fragrance. So, you know, that is a huge, huge difference in price. But you're not really getting much in terms of like extra quality or better smell, or even really performance, you know, to that matter. Now, the Oud Maracuja, to me, it does push a little bit more than what the Azzure Oud does, at least so far anyway. Now, you know, obviously with the French Avenue fragrances, most of the time these fragrances, they do get, you know, a lot stronger after about a month or two of, you know, maturating. So I would assume that this would probably end up being just as strong, if not stronger than Oud Maracuja after that amount of time. But I mean, so far, if I'm gonna say that there is any difference in strength, the difference is probably anywhere from, I would say, probably 5% or less in terms of strength. Yeah, the Oud Maracuja is about 5% stronger in terms of, you know, how it projects. But I mean, really, is that worth paying the extra money for it? In my opinion, it's not. It's really not. So I mean, I think you have to really be like like if you're a collector of, you know, original fragrances, or you're a collector of the line of Maison Criveli, and, you know, Oud Maracuja is the one fragrance that you don't have, then I guess maybe it makes sense for you to go out and spend that extra money on the Oud Maracuja, you know, to kind of complete your collection. You know, especially if you've paid the money for the other fragrances, because all the fragrances under Maison Criveli seem to be pretty high up there in terms of price. But if you're the average person who likes the scent profile, but you don't necessarily have to have the original fragrance, and you're okay with, you know, this fragrance maybe being just a couple percent, you know, more synthetic, you know, than what the original fragrance is, or, you know, a couple of percent less projecting, then I think that this absolutely makes, you know, more sense to purchase. Now, to me, this isn't going to be as close to the original as what Liquid Brune is, in my opinion. That's definitely, in my opinion, like more of kind of like a one-to-one sort of, you know, clone of the fragrance. This one, to me, is going to be more like a 95%. So still super close to the original, just to me, not as close as what Liquid Brune is to Altair. Now, just for the overall sort of performance, like I said, the projection on this is still going to be pretty beast mode, but just about 5% toned down from what it is from the Oud Maracuja. And then in terms of like the longevity, this easily lasts me over 12 hours on my skin. So this is still going to be a very good performing fragrance, and I'm sure over time this will only get better. In terms of like the sillage is also pretty good as well. So it's gonna leave a sillage of at least like 4 feet or more. So really, really good sillage, good projection as well. And I mean, just overall, like I said, as the two fragrances start to dry down, they become, in a lot of ways, almost kind of indistinguishable from each other for sure. So just kind of transitioning into like my closeness rating for this fragrance. Overall, like I said, this is going to be at least about a 95% close to Oud Maracuja. It, like I said, it definitely is the least close to Oud Maracuja in the opening, and that's only because of the quality of the fruits that you get, from the Oud Maracuja. But Azzure Aoud, after, like I said, about that sort of, 10 to 15 minute mark, it becomes, to my nose, almost identical to, Oud Maracuja. Now, in terms of like the overall rating for this is a solid like 8.5 out of 10 for me. Like I said, this is definitely more. It's more on the wearable side for me when it comes to an oud fragrance. Now, I'm not going to say that this is going to be like a blind buyable oud fragrance, especially if you're someone who isn't really that experienced with wearing oud fragrances, or you're someone who, maybe you've kind of liked some oud fragrances, but for the most part, you never really feel that comfortable wearing oud fragrances around other people. Then I'm going to say that this may not necessarily be a fragrance that you'll want to, blind buy. So maybe do what I did, which is, go and purchase like a sample like this of Oud Maracuja. I believe this is like a 2 ml, sample or whatnot. All together with shipping, it is kind of on the expensive side. So, I mean, it cost me, I think, just under like $20 or so for, this sample of Oud Maracuja. But if you don't want to spend 50 something dollars and you just want to kind of try this out and see, how it works on your skin and how you like it, then, I mean, I think, $20 for a really high quality, expensive fragrance is not necessarily the end of the world. Now, you could also just blind buy this fragrance as well if you don't necessarily care that much. And I think if you don't necessarily like this fragrance, it would be pretty easy probably for you to resell this fragrance on like a Facebook group or something like that. So it's not necessarily end of the world if you, go out and blind buy the Azzure Aoud, but definitely I would say you don't want to necessarily go out and blind buy a full bottle of the Oud Maracuja, because that is going to set you back quite a bit. And, if you go to resell that fragrance, you're not going to get, you're not going to get what you actually paid for it. All right. So that is my take on this fragrance, man. This fragrance, I think, is definitely a fragrance that, it does have some versatility to it. So to me, this is going to be a fragrance that you can definitely wear casually. But I also think that this is a fragrance that you could easily wear dressed up. I don't necessarily think one situation, favors the other when it comes to this. I think, it all depends on what your mood is, or, what your personality is and what types of fragrances you like to wear. But either way, I do think that this is a very nice, oud-based fragrance that definitely appeals, in my opinion, to both men and women. So it is very unisex, very, mass appealing for an oud fragrance anyway, and very versatile as well. Again, I would just be careful with this. If you're not really familiar with oud fragrances, the dry down of this, may throw a lot of people off if they're not really used to wearing, oud-based fragrances. All right. Or if they're just kind of, I would say if you're like early on in your fragrance journey, maybe a fragrance like this is not necessarily the type of fragrance that you'll want to start getting into right away. I could easily see myself hating a fragrance like this probably 5 to 6 years ago. All right, so that's my take on Azzure Aoud, man. This is a solid interpretation of Oud Maracuja. I absolutely recommend this over the original, just because of how close it comes to the original and the price difference, that you get with this. This is a really amazing interpretation, and again, a really good one from French Avenue. All right, so let me know in the comments what you all think about Azzure Aoud. Do you all love this fragrance? Do you hate it? Is it just okay? Let me know in the comments. And also, do you agree with my assessment of how close this comes to the original fragrance? All right. Also, if you're brand new to the channel, do me a favor, go ahead and subscribe. And again, that's Jamar from Vegas Scents. I'll see y'all in the next video.